twisting. He agreed to moderate this and also help working out some questions beforehand. We will have questions at the end that you all can ask, so write down your questions or hold those thoughts, probably the last 15 minutes or so. And then afterwards, as most of you know, we have a happy hour in ICME, so it'll be a great chance. Hopefully you all can stay, and then you'll have a chance to talk one-on-one with all the students. And I'd like to introduce Kapil Jain, who's here. He's the director of the new Masters in Computational Finance program. So welcome, if you want to say a few words.
Yeah, just thanks everyone for coming out, and you know, we're obviously very honored to have folks come back to the department and talk to all of us about entrepreneurialism. I know in finance, it's a very old and crusty industry that's experiencing lots of disruption, so it's pretty exciting to hear about this, and I'm sure for all of you. So just jump right in.
Great. Okay, take it away.
So hello. What we thought of doing, and this is why we have printed out our biographies, is that we will not spend too much time on introductions. That way we can jump right into the questions if that is okay with all of you. So is that good? All right. So let me start with the question that most of you must have, which is how did we all end up at some point at a startup? And so who wants to take it first?
Sure. So I have some friends interested in startups as an undergrad, not necessarily starting them with things like Hacker News, TechCrunch, and what have you. They got me a little bit interested towards the end of my undergrad. I worked at a startup part-time and decided that it was something that I wanted to pursue. So I came out to Stanford really with the intention of getting more and more into kind of Silicon Valley and the startup world, and just kind of went from there.
Great.
Where you go? All right. Well, so I guess I actually I had a startup that I started during my PhD at Wharton. It's a sports analytics company. So I kind of got into that because I got bored during my PhD. Your thesis is pretty awful. I don't know how many of you guys are doing that stuff, but I would have gone insane if I had just kept doing my thesis all day long. So I was like, okay, I gotta look at something different. So I started that company, and then the company that I'm currently at is also a fairly new company as well in finance, and I thought, okay, my other company had kind of grown to a point where, like in all startups, you have to figure out, okay, what is my role, where am I going to grow, and what else can I learn from my role, and so I jumped back into a newer startup to see, okay, this is better fitting for me in the future. So it's, I think it's easy to tend towards those sort of things, especially as someone that, you know, people in interdisciplinary things and academic fields who like exciting new innovation and stuff like that.
So in my case, I never thought of starting a company, to be honest. I actually wanted to take the route of academia. All of a sudden, I don't know, it's just the whole Silicon Valley environment, and I needed to take a break from the PhD. We had this idea, we had support from our advisors, and we just took time off from the PhD and started the company. It's only then when we realized that it's actually quite much harder to start a company than what we thought. But yeah, that's my story.
So I also thought I was going to go into academia. PhD took longer than I thought, and I found I don't really like writing papers that much. So I went and did private industry for a couple of years, basically statistical consulting, and then I met through a friend of a friend, a guy who was a graduate school of business and had a bunch of venture capital experience and background, and was basically able to fill out that little side of the business that I didn't have a lot of interest in, like going and talking to investors and the whole raising money aspect of things. So it just kind of, an opportunity presented itself, and I just really went in. That was the great thing to do.
Great. So I see that we all have a little bit of a different background. For me, I was starting my job search exactly at the time that the biggest financial crisis of all times hit. And so as you can imagine, the jobs evaporated. And so I started initially just looking at big labs, academia, big companies, and so at some point you realize, okay, you know what, let's try to see what's happening in startup world, right? And the reason I didn't start with startups to begin with is that to me there was this very real opportunity cost of joining a company and doing a lot of, let's say, low level work that has to be done for a product to be launched, and not actually banking on all of the things that I was doing in my PhD. And so in the end, I actually ended up joining a company that had a research team, a real research team that was essentially 10% of the workforce for the startup. And so for me, it was the best, let's say, low-risk startup environment. So let me follow up with a question related to opportunity cost, actually. Right now, even though you're in a startup, right, and it's pretty, I'm pretty sure it's very exciting, you must be having companies calling you all the time, telling you how you can have a much better career somewhere else, the impact you can have, and all this. So how do you think about this opportunity cost, especially if you have not yet joined that company?
Let's see. So yeah, there certainly are those kind of calls, and I think you are giving up things as a founder. Certainly money, social life. A bunch of my friends have joined Google, and those types of companies have become PMs and whatnot. But I've decided that this is an area that I really want to grow in, and so certainly for the moment, I'm kind of sacrificing some of those opportunities so that I can hopefully grow in other ways, things so I can, say, get a little bit better at management and recruiting and a host of other kind of skills that go along with being a startup entrepreneur.
Well, for me, I view, for example, getting your PhD or your master's as a way of investing in yourself. Right? You're making a bet. You're saying, okay, I bet if I take 2 years of my life and don't earn a dime and just put it towards myself, I invest in myself somehow, then that bet will pay off. And there's only two ways that you can really think about those bets paying off. Either one, you think you're going to go into academia because that's your appeal, or two, because you believe in yourself enough to invest in it and then yield the output later. And so I guess it's just a matter of, to me, the opportunity cost is when do you want to stop investing in yourself? And so for me, it was like, oh, well, I can go to a company, you get big payout, whatever, I'm done. And so I'm reaping the rewards of the investment I made in the past, doing PhD, doing startup, doing whatever. Or you can say, okay, well, I'll keep giving my current earnings away, go do something that's starting up for future gains. To me, it's all about a balance of how much do you want to bet on yourself and invest for the risk of getting bigger future gains than trying to pull from current ones.
So I actually have quite both points of view. Because of immigration, I still have on my LinkedIn profile data mining lead, so I get a lot of calls. but then I am the one who is also recruiting, so I am the one who is brainwashing a lot of people on, yeah, hey, you have to join us instead of joining the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. And to be honest, it's not an opportunity cost problem, it's a problem of what is your DNA like. So there is people that are built for big companies, and they like certain lifestyle. They like to have this comfort of knowing that next month they're going to have the same paycheck and everything is going to be okay. The company will not break if they make a mistake. And then there is people that like this acceleration of the startup. They like to feel like they're a key part of it. If they make a mistake, the whole world finishes for the startup. So they like to be on their toes. And then there's people who are built for academia also, right? You need a different DNA for that too. So the question is, what kind of person are you? Because no matter how much Google and Facebook pays you, if you are the startup person, you are going to be miserable at Google and Facebook. And there's plenty of startups that have funding enough to pay you a quite reasonable rate. We actually just this month brought in somebody she was at my lab in graphics, and she accepted our offer. She started on Monday. and she was another PhD student, and her Google offer was just $1,000 less than ours, so $1,000 more. So she was we were pretty close with the offer, but she's more of this, she wants this acceleration and this learning fast rather than just this comfort job. So it's not about compromising, it's about what are you a startup person or are you a big company person?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with most of those points, and I think it's really about your own personal risk tolerance. Like, and I think if you're younger, you should have much higher risk tolerance, and unless you have big things that 12, you have 5 kids or something. It changes the equation, but I do. I mean, like, I generally feel like unless you are a founder or co-founder, I mean, companies have to pay for technical talent. I mean, so most startups are gonna pay you probably 80% of what they can. So but with a lot more creative control and higher upside. I don't know. Depending on how good it is.
So interestingly, both Ian and Monse talked about recruiting, and even though we didn't think about asking the recruiting question, how do you go about not brainwash someone, but actually select who seems to have the startup DNA and who does not seem to have it? What do you look into in candidates to try to discern that rare quality?
Oh, we tell them right away from the first interview. If they pass the first basic interview, I tell them right away, look, we are not going to proceed unless you are absolutely excited about this. And if we give you an offer, you are going to take that offer. And this is more or less the terms that you should expect. But otherwise, just don't waste our time, because we are not interested in people who are not startup mentality. So you need to want to grow. You need to want to be in an environment. What we provide is an environment of high growth. You have a lot of talent at the company from where you can learn, from whom you can learn, and you have a lot of ownership, and whatever gets deployed to hundreds of millions of users. And if you don't want this, then well, you should just go. I mean, we like to understand what kind of companies they are interviewing, and if they are only interviewing big companies, then that's already a red flag right there.
I would say that there's also a big premium on kind of passion. We're in the healthcare space, so passion for healthcare, and then also startups. Startups are tough. There's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of stressors and things like that. And I think if you don't have that passion, you're probably going to burn out in a startup after not so long. And of course, in a startup, you want to bring along people that are going to be there for the long run, who are going to be able to grow with your company and help you grow ultimately.
I mean, I would say also, I think in terms of how you know who has the startup DNA, it's in some ways self-selecting, because, if you're up front with what you are, most people are not going to want to join that if, they don't have a high risk tolerance. But, for us, recruiting has been very, organic, and, it's a lot of friends of friends, and then certain things like we just hired two data scientists from this we call it Zipfian Academy, which was right across from our office, and it was just, they did a tour and they liked it, and it was a good. So it's just things like that.
Yeah, I actually agree a lot. The relationship thing is such a huge, important part, I think, of recruiting, just for a whole host of reasons. I think, just like anything, everybody always says, oh, this industry is a relationship industry, or this business is a relationship. Everything is a relationship, unless you're, Ed Witten or someone like that can solve, some physics problem, and then you just immediately gain notoriety. Otherwise, you have to know people. And I think that is huge because, and it's not a bad thing, especially as someone who, only thinks about numbers. I still think it's an important thing because it's almost the filter. You need the filter, and relationships are just another way to filter. And a lot of times at a startup, we don't have time to go through a process of filtering through 400 candidates. At one of my jobs, the startup that I started, Crossover, I posted a job called Sports Guru. That job got, literally it was, I need someone that likes sports stats and people that want to do stuff in sports. I had 10,000 resumes in 2 weeks. Horrible idea, just an awful, awful idea. And so, you know, you filter, you're like, okay, this is bad, this is bad. Like, this is got to rethink how I'm going to recruit for this position. And sure enough, the relationship thing was a big part of it.
Do you mind if I interject with a question?
Sure.
Is there a way you guys especially screen for people who are like, let's say, in the second stage? I think once they said that you actually want them to be very committed by the second time, right? Do you ask them to do certain projects and then get back to, like, how do you go about it?
No, I just tell them just think about it, but I want you to be really excited, and you can see it when somebody is just very excited about the opportunity. And if we don't feel that excitement, then I mean there's just no.
Don't you feel that part created a little bit of a bias in the sense that when you said if they're already applying to like bigger companies?
No, they can apply to bigger companies, but I like to see that they are also applying to smaller companies.
Okay.
So, and generally I would ask them, well, why are you applying for a startup? And depending on the answer, you know,
Right.
if you're applying to a startup because I just want to increase my chances of getting a job, well, I mean, actually it's harder to get into a startup than into the big companies, to be honest. And, you know, that's not a good answer. So.
And James, to follow up, do you ask them to do like some sabermetrics and stuff? Hey, have you done a college?
I did.
Did.
I mean, that was a whole questionnaire. It was
Yeah.
just nonsense,
Okay.
and everybody still did it. So yeah, no, but I actually second the point that you were asking here. You know, if they look at bigger companies, I actually I do bias against that, honestly. I mean, because like if someone applies to the sports position, for example,
Right.
when I hired that, and they told me that I'm also applying to Bear Stearns and
Right.
and you know, I don't know, Kellogg's or something, right?
Right.
I'm like, well, I don't want that person. But if they told me, oh, I applied to the Yankees and you, and that was it, I'm like, okay, well, what would the Yankees say about you or something?
May I ask a follow-up question too?
Can we
guys?
wait till we go to the questions later? Otherwise, we're going to spend our time in recruiting, and I'd rather not do that if that's okay. All right. So I just wanted to add something regarding the recruiting piece. Is that the startup that I joined was actually 9 years old when we actually sold it very successfully, and I have been hiring data scientists for 3 years. And for me, I don't have any of these biases just because the startup was already big enough that we could take the risk of having someone that is not really 100% a startup person, but has enough tolerance for the risk of not learning as much as they want in the specialized area that they studied, but learning a lot in other areas that they didn't know about. So for us, it was more about finding someone that is sufficiently well-rounded that they can be efficient in other areas than the one they were trained for. So for instance, if you're studying optimization and you're not able to hit the ground running with machine learning like this, you're not going to make it in a startup because they're essentially the same thing from a startup point of view. And if you're a machine learning person and you cannot do optimization, that's not going to happen, right? And so it's a little bit of for us it was more the flexibility of the person. So let me ask a question about math, given that I'm assuming that a lot of people here actually like math. Have you ever used big math, as Margot used to call it, in a real product, not in a demo, not in an analysis, not in a pitch, actually in a real product that has some big math inside?
Kind of surrounding real math. I would say that a lot of our products are a little bit kind of simpler. And I think within a startup, you know, the worst thing you can do is spend 6 months kind of on a hypothesis that people are really going to like this chat app, for example. And then to finally release it and realize people don't really like it that much. I think it's good to be kind of nimble, release things early, and I think a lot of the kind of data science side things would follow a similar trend, and that you should try to get things out that are simpler, that are going to give you some idea of whether or not it's helpful, if people do like it. And for us, at this point, really spending like months and months kind of iterating on a singular algorithm has not really been kind of our highest priority, certainly in the pipeline, but thus far it's really finding those places that really resonate with our customers. So not as much.
Go ahead.
No. But we've done, how to explain this? So we have been solving interesting problems that traditionally had required big math in academia, had been solved with big math in academia. But when you go to the real world, they're too slow, right, or too complex. So you want to redefine the problem in a way that you take similar solutions from other fields, right, and try to come up with a simple solution that will get you 90% deal, right? So that's how we've gone about it. So our solutions are actually quite simple but clever, and but you won't see. It's very hard to. First of all, when you do a very, very complex solution, right, it's not only going to slow down the whole system, but it's going to be also very hard to maintain, and that is a problem.
So in my previous job, I was able to pose the statistical problem as a linear program and solve it thousands of times faster, and we made a product out of it, actually. So in my current company, yeah, I mean, I think generally you don't want to optimize too early. I mean, so it's like you have to find something that you know is going to be a bottleneck and you know is going to be critical to your value, and then you can spend a bunch of time researching the algorithm and optimizing that. But generally, it's like if you can find some package that does it, or if you can find some off-the-shelf thing which does what you want, it'll get you 90% of the way. And then your product team can come back and say this needs to be better. But there's just too many things to do.
Yeah, I would say that's actually why I left my startup, my first one, is because I did no big math. It was, it turns out a high school coach that plays basketball doesn't like big math and can't really understand it. So, which is a good thing to learn too, right? You have to learn how to translate things to a basic enough level that everybody can understand and use it. But that's why I moved to the firm I'm at now, which that's all we do, is trying to solve things quickly with, big statistics and big math and those sorts of things. So I think it's, it's definitely true though. You want to try to be concise. You have to find solutions that get you 90% of the way there. But there are definitely some places where you'll have more of a chance to an opportunity to use big math than others.
I would say this is an area that kind of follows the 80-20 principle, in that you can spend 20% of the time to get 80% there, or you can spend 100% of the time to get 100% there. In a startup, there's just kind of too many things to do. So if you can spend 20% of your time and do pretty well in this area before it's really, really proven out, it tends to make sense.
And the whole thing is generally a system of you can call it, I don't know, algorithms or however you want to call it. And you want to make sure that every piece is optimized to that 80 or 90% rather than over-focusing on one that it's going to give you 100%, but then another one, because you didn't have to focus on, it's going to give you 50, right? So you want to get everybody to 80, 90, and then you can start reiterating and see if you can do something better.
So what I like about by the way, I totally agree with what was said here. And to me, that was one of the biggest challenges recruiting. Because on the one hand, I want to have a powerhouse of mathematics and computer science in my team. On the other hand, I cannot tell them to work on something that is cutting edge, because there's no need to do cutting edge yet. However, and this is something that we experienced as we went through massive growth, is that the moment you start having a critical amount of data, then suddenly these techniques that seem to be very expensive and difficult to maintain, they actually start reaping benefits that double your efficiency, or actually get you to really a different level of performance, and usually that's when you get it. But it takes a long time before you start seeing all of this big math in companies, mostly because the state of the art in other companies is just so far down below what you can do that simple solutions tend to work. So, technical side, what is it that you needed to learn for your job that you didn't learn, that you didn't know before starting it, or your company that you have?
So specifically on the technical side, I would say from a non-technical side, there's a lot of things that I didn't learn as much in school. And I think the only things you can kind of learn within a startup or a company or whatever it is, a lot of relationship building, management, you name it. On the technical side, I think one of the areas where academia struggles a little bit are things like maintainability of code, testability, you name it. You know, academia tends to be filled with, say, or you know, a lot of early academia tends to be filled with 2-week projects, so you don't really have to maintain these things. You don't have to worry about someone else coming in and messing with your code and things like that. So really just kind of code management, again, testability, documentation, you name it, was one of the big areas where I experienced quite a bit of growth. And then alongside with that, there's a whole host of other things, just kind of running an engineering team, things like branching strategies, and there's just probably too many to really name. Just a lot of smaller kind of side things that help the team run.
Yeah, I'd say Python. Obviously, yeah. I mean, I use Python in my PhD, but you usually use R. It's just you're lazy and it's easier. And when you start using other people, you're like, oh, now I have to start working with other people, and you start realizing you have to make sure your code is nice, like you were saying. But honestly, I think the most important technical skill I ever learned was, especially, and I still learn every day, is how to write an email properly. Because I'm telling you, the better and better you get at writing an email, the better and better a communicator you are. Because if you're staying up till 2 a.m. every day, emails are going to start getting shorter and shorter and terser and terser. So knowing how to be concise and a good communicator, it will be every time I comment code or whatever it is like that.
We almost lost our first round of financing to an email.
Yeah. That's important. That's important.
So I can summarize our ideal candidate in 3 things. So these are our requirements. Number 1 and most important, clarity of thinking. This is something that you do not learn anywhere, you just have it. You are born with it, or you acquire it over time. Number 2 is algorithms 101, or basic algorithms. And number 3 is object-oriented design. If you have clarity of thinking and basic in algorithms and coding, you can learn anything. We can teach you anything. That's just, those are our 3 requirements. So I think that on the technical side, I mean, you just grow as you go with the startup, to be honest. I think I got much better at clarity of thinking along the way. But I think that the basic algorithms and the basic coding, I was able to acquire through my PhD, definitely.
So I did software development before PhD, so I had good coding skills, and so, but I mean, when I started this company, I learned Objective-C, so I learned how to do iPhone apps, and I also did some server stuff, so I learned some Node and some stuff. My company actually make, at the moment we're making a game with 3D animation, so actually I learned about that whole pipeline and how to do like Blender and how to, some of the math that's involved with that. But I think that when you are, especially a small startup, I mean, and you are the chief technical person, you have to know how everything works in the pipeline.
So yeah, for me I would say that it is really coding. I mean, when I say coding, I don't mean CS 105 or things like that. I mean real coding, maintaining the code, writing the test, and basically living through the nightmare of figuring out what this code was, let's say 5 months after you've written it, which is a lot more difficult than it sounds. Another thing that I want to say is that, echoing what James said, is that R is coding, yes, but R is not what you code in. Right? So MATLAB definitely, it is good to do class projects and for gigantic companies that can pay MATLAB licenses. I have yet to see one single startup that actually uses MATLAB. Maybe there's one, I don't know, that uses R in some of them. But yeah, coding definitely is something that you, if I were to redo my PhD again, I would actually code a lot more than I did, which is not much.
Yeah, disclaimer, if we see R or MATLAB in the resume, we do not call that person. Automatically. We don't care if that person has a PhD or whatever they have.
So let me ask a question too. I think the four of you actually have founded a company at some point or another, right? What are some specific challenges that that you have seen that only founders face, that people like me that just joined a company that happened to get started with no face?
I think some of the challenges unique to being a founder, first off, the number of hats that you wear is massive. I don't think there's many occupations that have to wear as many hats. By as many hats, I mean things like technically I have to know data, I have to know back-end, front-end, system admin, front-end performance, you name it. And that's just kind of the technical side of things. Kind of away from that, recruiting, management, communication skills, you name it. There's just a lot of things that have to happen at a startup. And as a founder, you're going to be doing a lot of those things. And so you're just kind of spread thin at all times. And on top of that, I think it's it can be pretty stressful being a founder. I think in any startup, it's kind of characterized by the ups and the downs. So, you know, on Monday you'll feel like you'll be the next Google. On Tuesday you'll feel like you're an idiot. Why am I wasting my time on this? On Wednesday you'll think you'll be the next Facebook. And that's just kind of startup life, honestly. And I think founders take a lot of that kind of stress and a lot of that up and down. And I think when they're kind of good founders, do their best to kind of shield some of the employees and whatnot from that to some degree. And of course, everyone in a startup, again, going through a lot of stuff, but generally the founders, I think, are the ones kind of taking the brunt of that stress.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, those are all true. I would say, thinking of a specific example, zero balance. I won't say how many times it has happened to me, but it's happened enough where I've had sleepless nights. Not that I don't already have those, but that zero balance. Plenty of times where you look at that bank account, you're like, oh, it's time for me to think about what are we going to do next? Where's the next money coming from? Or how's the revenue going to come? I mean, you think about those things all the time. It's that's scary. I mean, that's like, you know, think about your own personal bank account when it starts going negative and thinking, okay, how do I deal with this when I have to pay people? Because, you know, in reality, 95% I think of all startups have to go through that feeling at some time or another.
There's just nothing that can psychologically prepare you to be a founder. It's so incredibly stressful and horrible. There's just nothing can prepare you for this. I cannot describe it with words. You just have to see it. And especially when if you are unlucky enough, like we were, not to have a product market fit at the beginning. And I mean, that time is completely, there's just no, I cannot describe it. But once you find a product market fit, then things are happy. There's still ups and downs, but you are not like, you know, it's not so horrible. There's still, you know, super high days and there's some low days, but it's still quite stressful. As you see, you have to pay people, you are going to get all kinds of things, things that you could have never thought about, and they are all going to come to you and you have to solve them, and you know, people get scared, your employees get scared. They cannot know if something goes wrong because you may be ready for this, you may be like, okay, I don't care if this happened, I lost a customer, or I don't know, whatever happened. Then if your employee sees this, oh my God, they get so scared, or a competition popped up, and they are like freaking out already, oh my God, they are going to kill us. And you know that it's okay, but you have to calm them down, and it's just so much. You have to be almost like almost like advisors in a way. They come to you for advice. You have to do the right thing. You have to make it fair for everybody. You cannot give more to others even though you know that they need, and you just have to be fair across the board. And then on the other hand, you have to worry about having the money to pay them, and then hopefully, and this is when you have the product market fit, of course. And then hopefully your ups are going to be higher than your downs. But if you don't have a product market fit, you just don't start the company, please. I mean, seriously, just don't do it. Do not raise money until you have a product market fit. Just do yourself a favor.
I think that's good advice. Yeah, no, I mean, I would say, you know, it is obviously stressful and a lot of work, but I would say personally, I find it, you know, I mean, to me, it's like you have to enjoy it and you have to be having fun, because you could just go get a job at Google or Facebook or something else. I mean, it's like if you're not getting something out of this personally, then it doesn't. I think from a financial perspective, it's probably not the smartest thing, right? I mean, it's not. I mean, and every graduate school is stressful. My previous jobs were stressful, so stress is not a unique thing to being a founder, co-founder.
But it's a very different experience. I was not a founder of the company I was at, and so I have never seen the balance sheet of the company, even though I was an officer of the company at the end. I did not know if we had $1 million in the bank account, $10 million, $100,000, nothing. Nobody knows, right? And so I think that you're very brave for taking this.
Yeah, we take it all on our shoulders. You see? It's a lot of weight, you know.
All right, so we have 20 minutes, so I'd like to open the questions from the audience. Yes?
So I'm curious about what you would recommend we can do while we're still in school to learn about scaling things. Because in computer science class, for example, or in numerical methods classes in ICME, you learn a bunch of things about sort of how to build things, but you never really get to build a massive system. And I'm curious if there's anything we can even do before just go to work with Google, go work for a startup that has a lot of customers.
Doing your research. Get yourself an advisor that likes you to build a big system. And then you'll build a big system.
So the other thing that I would recommend is that this is something that is not very well known, but in academia. But Amazon has these instances that you can buy on the spot instances. They cost, I think, something like 20 cents an hour of computing. That means that you can very easily go and test whether you can manage a system for, say, $20. You have hundreds of machines. They're going to crash many, many times, and you're going to, maybe for a couple $1,000s, you're going to figure out how to essentially manage a very large system, what the trade-offs are, and things like that. So it's possible to even experiment. And if you don't have data, you can go on and plug yourself to the Twitter posts, and you get a lot of tweets. And if you don't like the Twitter posts, you can go on and mine the web with a crawler that you can do in Python and maybe a couple of lines of code. So right now, there's no excuse. Someone that tells me, hey, I want to be a big scale or big data engineer, and they have not done anything with a scaled system, I just don't buy it, because all of these things are available. So yeah, that's a great question. Yes.
So maybe a question more specific to Montse, but did you feel like you faced like extra challenges being like, I imagine you're a non-native US person?
Yeah, I mean, both of us are foreigner. Well, now he has a green card, and I'm hopefully soon. It was approved, just changing status now, but definitely. So my co-founder actually, he's Russian, so he couldn't, it was very complex. Back then there was no startup visa. So from the visa standpoint, we had to accelerate our fundraising, because to be able to sponsor my visa, he was with OPT. We had to fundraise to prove that we had money in the bank account and that we were a legit company. Because there's this thing of they don't want to give work visa to founders because you may have just built a fake company to come to the US. So yeah, that was a big challenge. We fundraised too early, and that we didn't have a product market fit. That cost in 2 years of wasting money, wasting energy, where we could have just tried to focus on, okay, the product market fit without having employees, without having to spend this money. That increased the stress, definitely.
What were the different timelines like at your startups? For example, once you raise Series A, did something get a lot easier, or did it kind of get a lot more difficult because you had investors, or did it stay difficult until you reach, or I'm not quite sure how large you are, but
Raising money is not building a company. Raising money is just something that you have to do along the way, but it's just a check mark. Doesn't mean that you're going to build a company, doesn't mean that it's going to succeed, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that if the company fails, maybe your investors will find you a home.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you never raise money, right?
Yeah.
Ideally you never have to raise
I look
money.
up to those people, yeah.
My crossovers raised 60 million, and I am not necessarily proud of that. I mean, it's cool in some ways, but it's, you know, okay, there went $16 million of equity in it right away, right? I mean, so it's like that's, I mean, not to make it into some flowery thing, but every startup is like its own unique flower, right? So I'm sure it's gonna be different for every company, and so there's really no timeline. And it depends how much effort you're putting into it, obviously. Like if you guys all started right now while you're in school, then you can only commit so much time to it. But if you're in it full time and you have no money, then you'll probably put a lot of effort into it. It might ramp a lot quicker. So there are a lot of different factors into all that kind of stuff.
I would say, yeah, delay taking money as long as you can. But,
Just take it when you truly need to accelerate your business. You shouldn't take it to fund your business to build it. You should take it to accelerate it. So you should be like, look, right now we're going at this speed, and if I take money, I'll go like this. That's the moment, that's when you need to raise money. Not because, oh, I need to start a business and I cannot start it because I need money to hire people. No, just build stuff yourself first, sell it, get money, and then grow organically until you just need to accelerate it.
But did you feel like getting that money had a huge impact, or it kind of continued as it happened?
Oh, it's almost negative. It's more stress. Seriously. Now you are not just accountable to your team. You're accountable to investors also.
But it makes a difference. I don't know what you guys think. I mean, saying that you've raised money means that someone else believes in you.
Yeah.
Some type of validation.
It is validation. It is helpful. Just for that alone, right? Just to be able to say, oh, it's not just my dad and my mom who invested in the company, right? Like it makes a difference to be able to say, hey, someone else believes in me, right?
Yeah. I mean, some customers like it, that they're like, oh, somebody invested in you. Maybe you are not going to die tomorrow. That's some validation there, but.
I mean, like a lot of it's a social network. The funding, the people who have money. I mean, and so in your pitch deck we have these investors. I mean, there's it's kind of like a closed. So I think sometimes the thing even it's establishing yourself in a little bit of that kind of stuff. That, it has to be. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing. I think a lot of there's a lot of mistakes you can make.
There's some strategic investments where those are because of distribution. Those are interesting investments where they can help you grow just because they have there's a strategy behind you. Then they make a difference. So we had a couple of those, and they really do make a difference.
There was a question in the back.
It's a very specific question to James. James, does your firm have a due diligence team too?
I mean, that is what we do, essentially.
I'm actually just amazed like how you're just doing it with data, or do you actually do ground up due diligence?
Yeah, I mean, like, I haven't slept this past week because I went to an undisclosed location for a management team meeting on Friday. I found out Thursday 9 p.m. I flew the next morning. This is for a deal, and then we got like 60 million rows of data that weekend. We processed it, we turned things around for that Wednesday, and I mean, we're still working on it now. So yeah, I mean, that's a due diligence process. Is you got a week, here's a transaction database, make something out of this. And so that'll be, that's one side, and then of course we make our investments in these companies, and then afterwards we contribute to the countries in ways that, you know, as a data scientist using big math and models, we can come in and do. So very different than sports, that's for sure.
Yes, Gary.
I have a question. One of you mentioned building a team and data scientist team. Are there any skills, capabilities you wish you had practiced or acquired in school to help you be effective in building teams?
Well, I can take that. Because I still manage and build data science teams at my current company I work at. I think the biggest challenge for data scientists is that it takes a data scientist to actually manage a data scientist. So that's the first problem. That means that by default, the people that you're learning from are data scientists that kind of know how to manage. And there's not that many around. And so if there's something that I wish I learned to do better as I was in school or even along the way, is actually learn to really listen what the person is trying to say. Know what they're saying. It's not, oh, they're telling me that they want to use this method and this is going to be the results. That we're very good at. We actually get very efficient at doing that at school. It's actually trying to understand why is this person attached to this method. Why are they so adamant that they want to try something? It might be the case that for some reason they read a paper and they're not telling you about it, says that this is the method for it. And because of the time that you need to make a decision, you cannot go and ask them all of those details. So really listen and try to understand when there's some hidden information that might be useful. I think that has been one of the key components for me to be able to build better teams, which is basically how to ask the right question to your team members so that they feel that they are contributing to the most of their activities. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, so I got my PhD in statistics, and during my PhD, the best class I ever took was from a former, he worked at Bell Labs, and he's like an industry academic kind of guy, and you probably get a lot of these here. And the class was just called statistical analysis. And the best thing I ever learned from him, and I still know I haven't learned enough about it, is just data exploration. Like models are great, you know, assumptions are important, gotta know what you're doing, gotta know all the different things, random forest, regression, all this. But in the end of the day, if you can't look at the data and figure out, okay, what is it trying to tell me, or what are the simple things here that I can come out with, then you're gonna waste a lot of time with models, and you're not gonna be using your time effectively. Because if it turns out that all the numbers are going up, then hey, why do I need a model to tell me what to do, right? So a lot of that data exploration stuff wasn't really taught during my PhD because, right, I mean, it's all about what's the coolest and neatest gadget, shiniest method. The exploration stuff is super, super, super important, which is why R becomes such a pain in the butt because, you know, R can only handle so much, and, you know, having a big scale or a large database, you're going to have to do something bigger.
I actually totally back that. We don't build a team of data scientists, we build a team of data detectives. So we like detectives. One of the mistakes we did early on is being lured by people that throw these big buzzwords, right? And they read these papers, they know for this problem, this solution, for this problem, this solution, this. But then they don't think. That's where the clarity of thinking is super important. It's not a joke. And that's where the clarity of thinking comes into play. You want to be a data detective. You want to be able to look at the data, what is the data telling me, what are the biases, remove those biases, and then do your analysis. And most likely you're going to find a very simple solution that will take you there. But if you are not capable of finding those features of your data and removing those biases, it just doesn't matter. You're going to apply any model, and any model is going to perform poorly. It doesn't matter. So that's what we learned over time, that you want to build a team of data detectives.
So I think like for smaller firms, one of the very huge challenges in terms of data analysis is you guys don't have a lot of customers, so definitely not a lot of data entry. So like I think some of you you actually analyze data for your customers. So how difficult is it to convince these bigger customers to entrust their data to you?
We don't have real data. So, so that you have an idea of our scale. We have our tracking script on all of our companies, every single purchase, any single action on the website of our companies. And our companies are eBay and Groupon and Living Social and among others. Every single action comes to us, every single one of them. So we have this collection of all of these companies. So we don't deal with small data, believe me. And the way to convince them is we sell them money. We generate more dollars for every email you send, so they will do anything. They will share whatever. You just make sure you encrypt everything, and if we have any security problem, then everything is encrypted data, so nobody can make any sense of it.
Yeah, I would say sales is probably one of the most important life skills you can learn. If you're a good salesperson, it doesn't matter. Just like relationships, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, the best thing I ever learned during my PhD was I started a company. I had to learn how to sell to a coach. That somehow this nerd that's dressed up in a suit is trying to sell him some product, and he lives in no middle of nowhere in Iowa. I mean, those are the sort of things. Once you learn how to do that, then you can start learning how to sell people products. You have to learn how to sell, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you're good at it or not. It comes down to a sales pitch.
As long as you give them money, they'll give you anything.
No, if you give them money too, that's a good way. Yeah. That's a good sales pitch.
If you return them money, they'll give you anything.
I would say it also depends a lot on what your relationship with them is and the industry. I mean, I used to do healthcare, statistical consulting, and you think these companies are giving you a lot of money, they make your life easier by giving you data. A lot of those companies have been very, very tight with their data. So I think if they see a direct benefit from giving you data, then they do, but it really depends on
we're in healthcare, so of course the data we get is a little bit more sensitive. There's no secret to it. We have longer sales cycles. We have to go through lengthy, legal back and forth, blah, blah, blah. You said this, and you said this, back and forth with lawyers. No secret to it. Sales is not fun. That kind of your previous things that you've done and some of the results that you can promise. But I'm afraid there's no real magic to that.
All right, let's take one last question. Yes.
So I was curious, how did you guys meet your co-founders, and how did you sort of know that these were like the right people to sort of like embark on this sort of like undertaking?
It's a tough question. So I met my first co-founder actually at a Faces mixer. So Stanford Faces is some type of entrepreneurial something. I think I went to one event in my 2 years here. One event I did go to, I did happen to meet my co-founder. I'm not actually sure what it was, but just him and I got along really, really well together. Kind of clicked, and from there.
So my first startup was through my former roommate that I had in Italy. He was at a sports VC, and he met the sports VC was looking for a stats nerd, and I was like, oh, I love sports, and that worked out. The other one, it's actually, so my current firm, my roommate in my PhD, it turns out he knew about these guys. So if you live with the right people, my wife is also a director of data science, so if you have to know the right people, I think that helps.
So we worked together at Stanford Research. So we already knew each other. We already knew how to work together. But the most important thing is trust. You have to trust your founder 100%, because in those downs, you have to trust each other, and you cannot make it a war. You have to ultimately know who has the last say, how to convince each other. At some point, he has picked me up, I picked him up, but without trust, if we didn't have this trust, it would have been very, very hard.
For me, it was like a friend of it was kind of a setup when I first met him. It was like a friend of a friend, and he was looking for. I mean, as I said before, he had all of the kind of finance and side worked out, and so he was looking for a technical founder, and it works out. Works out well.
So let's thanks our panelists.
Great, thank you.